Hey everybody, welcome back to Jordan Tremaine Book Reviews. It is the end of the year, by which I mean 2021. And before we get into more book reviews this year, because I know all of you guys love to read books and listen to me talk about books that I've read, before we get into that in 2022, which it now is, so Happy New Year to everybody. Hey, Happy New Year. What I wanted to do is go over my top 5 books of 2021. Okay, so I went and looked through like all the books I read this year. I think I read like 25, 26 books. And out of those, I chose 5 that were goodies that I really enjoyed, that I really think people could get a lot out of. And I wanted to talk about those a little bit today. So those videos I'm going to go over today, but there were some honorable mentions. So if you head down to the comments or like the description, there you go. The description, there will be the other honorable mentions that I still think are great books to read out of the 25 I did this year. But here we go. So we're going to start with number 5. And out of all the books that I read this year, the number 5 on my top 5 list is The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Now if you watch this channel, you know that I've been getting into doing audiobooks and reading on digital copies, so I don't often have a physical copy to like wave around and say, hey, this is a book. And I read The Prince on audiobook, or I listened to it while I was riding bikes, so I can't wave it around. But that book, very similar to The Wealth of Nations, which I also did a review on a long time ago. It just had so much information in it that I think is good for people to know. Like when you're getting good basic information, this I think should be common sense. And some of the stuff that I think makes life difficult for people is their lack of certain information. Not their opinion about it, not what they do with it, just them not even knowing about it. And I think The Prince had a lot to do with how people interact, how groups of people interact, how nations interact, and what you can do to protect yourself and also try to gain advantage. And by learning about this stuff, by hearing this stuff, by being introduced to this stuff, even if you're not trying to take advantage of people, it really helps you to be like, oh, that guy is trying to take advantage of me, or oh, I'm seeing how this system works, I'm connecting the dots. And I really think The Prince did an excellent job of illuminating some of those facts. And also had a really interesting story about this guy named Castruccio at the end, which I really enjoyed. That kind of illustrated and demonstrated a lot of stuff that was explained in the book, so it tied it together with a story at the end. So I enjoyed that book. I've been wanting to read it for a long time, and I'm glad I read it this year. Coming in at number 4 on the list is The Myth of Mental Illness by Thomas Szasz. And this book, like The Prince, it's not really a storybook, even though the story about Castruccio at the end of The Prince is totally a story. The book, The Myth of Mental Illness, the title seems a little bit eye-catching and maybe controversial and stuff, but if you read the content in the book and you don't come into the book with prejudice, I think what's going on in the book is Thomas Szasz, which is somebody that is a professional in fields that deal with concepts like mental illness and try to treat it. So he has experience, he's had patients, he's had case studies, he's really gone through this system and tried to help. And he's seen that maybe the way the system is set up is not helpful. And I like and appreciate a lot how Szasz goes through and says what he thinks, he backs it up with research, he shows the history of how things evolved to the way they are now, not just saying this is right, we're going to say how we get here. And then we like look back and see how we got here and what we were doing before. And so it gives a lot of history about this idea today of mental illness and why Szasz thinks that it's not helpful to call certain conditions or certain realities mental illnesses, because it starts making us want to treat them like physical illnesses. Because when we think of terms of illness, then we start thinking in terms of cures and surgery, and it's not your fault. Like, you have cancer, that's not your fault. Let's give you pills, let's give you chemo, let's give you surgery, let's try to cut the tumor out. And when we deal with it and we medicalize it, as Szasz says, we take a lot of the accountability and the ability to be accountable away from the individual. And we don't say, hey, well, why are you depressed? Why do you have anxiety? Does this have anything to do with your personal choices? Does this have anything to do with how you think about the world? And maybe we should take some accountability. And not to say that depression and anxiety and all these different things are fake. The book is not saying that. He's saying that calling these things mental illnesses and treating them like they are illnesses, medicalizing them, is not helpful. It's not helping anybody. And does it even solve the problem? So that book, I thought, was, for me, it was a real eye-opener, and I don't know, it was good perspective. I thought that the content was presented well. To me, it wasn't offensive, but it was very different than what I'm normally used to hearing, and it had a big effect on me. So that's why it's in spot number 4 on the top 5. All right, on to number 3, which is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Surprise, surprise, another book that I listened to on audio. But this book I thought was really great, and it actually is a storybook. So it's a little departure from number 5 and number 4. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a completely fantastic story that is in a movie form, if you want to watch that, which is not as good as the book, which is often the case. But it's still a really great movie, and even though the storyline is kind of, here's the book storyline and here's the movie storyline, it doesn't really match up, it goes in kind of the same direction, even though those are different, the way that the movie kind of paints the picture of the different images and the different characters, I think really does a good job of how the original book was. And so, if you don't want to read the book, go watch the movie. It's a great movie. It's for kids, for date night, for families, for yourself. It's funny. It's good. And it aged really well because it's not a recent movie, but it still did a good job with the special effects. It's not like super offensive or racist now that it's been 10 years. Really good movie. And so I appreciate that. And the book, it's just... it's one that I wanted to listen to. I was upset a little bit. I was disappointed when the book was done. I was like, man, there's no more? I can't listen to this more? The story was well written. It was easy to listen to. It wasn't confusing at all. And it just made you want to listen to it. It's like, the reason it's on my favorite books list is because it was enjoyable to read. I just had a really good time reading it, or listening to it. And I was sad when it was done. And then when I watched the movie again, and I was like, yeah, this is dope. So, I don't want to get too much into the story because it's a little complicated. It has something to do with space, and it says Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so there's a lot of weird alien names and ideas and stuff. But it's easy to understand if you read the book. It's a really good book, and it's like, I don't know, full of really fantastic ideas that are just interesting. So, there you go. Boom. Number 3. In spot number 2... taking the silver medal for top 5 books of this year, is Stop Acting Rich by Thomas J. Stanley. Now this book is not a storybook. It's more of an information book, but it has a lot of little stories, little allegories in it. I appreciate that a lot. But it's kind of like here's some information book. And this information, much like with number 5 on the list, The Prince, is just information I think is really good for people to know. Common sense is not something you're born with. It's something that everybody has a different opinion on, and you have to acquire over time through experience and learning. And this is something I think you should acquire over time through experience and learning. It's really good for you. Learning is great. You should do learning. Learning! Anyways, Stop Acting Rich. It does give a lot of advice on how to not go bankrupt and not how to be financially stressed out. But I think more, it's kind of a peek behind the curtain, like, hey, look, it's a curtain. And you go, oh, yeah, what's behind here? It's kind of a peek behind the curtain to say, maybe some of these behaviors and this psychology that we're running with for what a rich person is kind of detrimental to us. Like, why do we think this is good? Why are we pursuing the things we're pursuing? Do we have reasons for doing what we're doing financially? And the author of the book actually surveyed a bunch of people and that actually have certain income brackets. And it turns out that through statistical research, what most people think rich is not what actual rich people do. It's what people that want to pretend to be rich do. And the whole premise of the book is, in reality, normally rich people are a lot more humble than you think they are. They don't wear flashy clothes. They own businesses, and they live in the suburbs, and they donate to their local charities and churches, and they're just nice people. They're not running around in Maseratis, like doing rap videos and telling everybody how rich they are. Some people do that, and they are actually rich. But by and large, the vast majority of people are just regular, degular people that are being smart with their money and looking towards the future. And I think the book breaks down a lot of common misconceptions about like what a lot of us think it means to be rich and what it takes to be rich, by asking different people, how did you get rich? What are different strategies? He statistically came up with, well, like, okay, out of the 10,000 rich people I interviewed, 9,000 of them gave this answer for one of the most important things to become rich. So statistically, this is important according to rich people. And so he's like backing this up with data, asking people who have actually done what he's trying to get to. And then he goes and asks the people that aren't rich and sees what they do. And he builds up statistics on that, and then like compares and contrasts them through stories and allegories. And it kind of just gives you a interesting kind of reset or a reframing of what you think rich is. And I think it can help a lot with taking the pressure off of your mind of saying like, oh, I got to keep up with the Joneses. Oh, I got to get the new smartwatch. Oh, I got to buy this new car. Oh, if I live this way, then people are going to think this. And it helps you like get out of that and be like, well, do any of those things contribute to what I want in the future? What do I actually want? Okay, I want this. How do I achieve that? Let's make a plan and go for it. Not like, oh, let's make a plan to pretend I have this and really go that way. Let's make a plan to actually get that and go get it. And I think it helps with the mindset. It doesn't really give you a bunch of like super hardcore financial strategies on how to do that, but I think a really good strategy for improvement is your mindset. And so this book works really well on your mindset, and I would recommend it because it's easy to read, has a bunch of statistical knowledge to back it up, has a bunch of stories in it and stuff, and I enjoyed it. Coming in at number 1, I don't know if you guys ever listen to Power 106. It's like a radio station in Los Angeles, but they used to have this thing, I don't know if they still have it, but it was Tito's Top 4 at 4. And when they got to the number 1 song, they'd be like, and number 1! That's what I think when I think of number 1. But anyways, coming in at number 1 is Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. And this book, I was like, whoa, another not storybook, but great because it had a bunch of little stories in it. And this was like crazy in terms of like mindset shifting, because it's so interesting how often like you want to go over there, but you start slightly off, and then as time goes on, you end up very far away from where you wanted to be because you're slightly off in the beginning, and you're misunderstanding, or you having a bad idea, you're just misconception, your different mindset, just your mindset's just a little bit different, like over time. It's like, whoa, the gap is huge, and that's called compounding interest. But I think a lot of the top 5 books I have are about mindset, and it's not about self-improvement. It's not about get rich quick. It's not about I'm depressed, let me undepress myself. It's like you should just seek improvement and learning and have curiosity and imagination and talk to other people, do different things. And that's the kind of mindset shifting I'm talking about. Like as you grow older, you should continue to think. You should continue to grow. You should try new things. And when something conflicts with your previous knowledge, test them. See why there's a conflict and try to resolve it. Don't just be like, I'm just going to ignore that. Don't do that. Learn, think, talk to other people, experiment. It's good. And I think Thinking in Bets is along that line of mindset shifting or mindset progressing. And it's so great because it's talking about how you think, which is such a fundamental part of your intelligence, your mental health, your ability to understand things, your ability to make decisions. And it's saying how you think about something has a lot to do with your freedom to interact with it. And if you think about something in one way, you might only have these choices. But the same exact situation, because you are different, because you think in a different way, you might now have these choices because your thought process is different. And Annie Duke offers a thought process that she calls thinking in bets that really goes towards this. That was great. All 5 of these books I think are good. I know there was one storybook in there, which was, it was the funniest story that I read all year. I liked it a lot. But this book, I think this year has been like a mindset year for me, because I just ended up reading all these books about mindset shifts. And then if you go listen or look at the honorable mentions in the description, a bunch of those are mindset books, or like here's some information, dude, like how does it relate to reality and stuff. So those are my top 5 books. If you like this channel and you're like, oh, which book should I read? He reads too many books. I can only read some books. Read these books. These books are great. And they're all on audio. You can listen to them while you're in the car, or on a walk, or when you should be in a conference listening to your boss, but it's not an important conference and he won't let you leave. You can just put your head down, your hair over your earphones, and listen to something useful. Don't do that with your significant other, though. I just think these are good resources for not even changing your life, but getting opportunities to be exposed to new things. Don't feel attacked. Just be like, oh, new information. Maybe I could do something with it. Let me take a look. And so these are my top 5. I am definitely going to keep reading for this next year, so there's going to be another top 5 later. But as far as 2021, my top 5 books are The Prince, The Myth of Mental Illness, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Stop Acting Rich, and Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. So this has been on the channel of Jordan Tremaine Book Reviews, and I guess it has been a book review because I've just reviewed 5 books again. But if you want more information, all the books that I talked about have their own book reviews. I'll throw those links in the description. And then the honorable mentions, I still think those are great books, so I would definitely go check those out. But this has been Jordan Tremaine with another book review. I hope you had a great 2021, and welcome to the new year. See you later.